Hi everybody, welcome to Chapter 2 of the Kachur Ch Networks text. We're going to be talking about developing and designing a school culture linked to walkthroughs. You will notice that the template for this is different than the one that I'm using in the class, but I wanted it to be able to be seen so that you didn't have to refer to the PowerPoint for the videos, so you can follow along. I promise you all the content's the same. If something seems off a little bit, I might have to adjust the slides, but I wanted you to be able to see because we're in a room that's really not conducive to lighting to record this. This chapter really looks at school culture, what school culture is, and what school culture represents. In our doc program, we really focus on school culture. And it's an important element to consider at the building level as well as the district level. We don't do much in the master's program with school culture, but I think it's important if you're going to be engaging teachers in walkthroughs, and I took a different approach in this chapter than I think the book did. Remember, when I talk about this book is a research study. That's what it is. It's presented as a research study. As a research study, the book represents the book represents findings from different states, different practices. So I tried to take the ideas and the findings that I thought mattered most, and that's what I wanted to focus these videos on, so that you had a good idea. When we look at walkthroughs, when it's presented in this book, what I thought was interesting is all of the teacher walkthroughs that were looked at in these books happened with active principals to start. So the principals would walk around with the teachers in the beginning. They would help them understand what they were supposed to be looking for, what was correct in the classroom, incorrect, how they could help support the teachers, and then they helped them so that the culture was acceptable where teachers could go into classrooms. And remember what I said when we looked at the first chapter of this textbook. There are times when teachers are not going to want you in their classroom, even if you're there to help them, and you have to keep that in mind. So principals have to be encouraging, and they have to tell teachers that, hey, this is done to help you, this is not done to hurt you, and there has to be no real accountability placed on this, so that teachers have the freedom and the autonomy to complete walkthroughs, and they can help the other teachers improve without worrying about accountability. So when I was reading this, I thought the key to create this culture, and this is just me speculating, really is that teachers should be attending meetings instead, teachers should be leading meetings instead of attending them, and this is what's going to help the best. In my district, when I was an administrator, I wasn't allowed to do this. I had to lead all meetings. If you allow teachers to lead the meetings, you create an environment where the principal really is someone that's part of the discussion, but not the voice that makes kind of what the ultimate decision is. If you want teachers to have control over walkthroughs, you need to give them control over other dimensions, because if you do, other people start to represent and see that, hey, teachers have power in this district, teachers are empowered to do things, and that's going to help create a culture where this is much, much, much more acceptable. So, shared leadership. Teachers have to be comfortable opening up their classrooms to others. And if they're not, then there's not going to be teacher participation in these activities. So my advice to make this work is the 5 or 6 teachers that you're going to have in your building that are going to engage in these walkthrough practices, they need to be the ones that open up their classroom to everybody else and to the general public first. Because if they do that, that's going to advance this a lot more. And that's going to create an environment where the teachers feel comfortable and they can advance. Many teachers are afraid of opening their classroom. You don't need me to tell you this. We all know this is the truth. Most of the teachers are worried that there's going to be a gotcha moment where the teachers could be caught at a poor position from a colleague. They're going to worry that the teachers are going to gossip and say, this teacher's horrible. I was in their classroom. This is what happened. They're not going to know what the purpose of the walkthrough is. They're very scared that it's going to be used against them for data, or even worse, they have a great lesson and they think, okay, this is my formal observation, and it's really not their formal observation. That is something to truly be scared about, and it's why people do have these fears of opening up their classroom to other teachers coming in. the key thing that I want you to remember about this is all these fears are very true. I think they're true fears, and I think they're legitimate problems. The problem and the challenge with these fears is the fact that we really can't fix them. We just have to create an environment where this is acceptable, and these things aren't going to happen organically, and people do feel comfortable. And if we create that environment, we're well on our way to making a better situation. So, in the districts that I worked at, this never would have happened overnight. This would have been a 4 or 5 year procedure. In my belief and my hypothesis is, in order for it to work, the real leaders in the building have to be the ones that open up their classroom, and then the more timid teachers can be the ones that come in and observe them. Then hopefully that will help them build comfort and build trust. And remember what I said about being a new building principal in your environment. The one thing that I want to see more than anything else is to have an environment of trust and safety where really you feel comfortable evaluating all of the teachers in the building. And if you start with the teachers that you know are rock stars, that's going to make you understanding the evaluation process better, and it's going to make your interpretations of what evaluations look like better as well. And that's just my belief and my takeaway from all of this. So you have to have an environment of trust and safety in your building. Teachers and administrators change all of the time though, so that culture has to be embedded. It has to be something that I would even argue is discussed in the interview process. When you're interviewing a teacher, one of the things you should look at them and say is, hey, we let other teachers walk through and observe and give feedback. Are you okay with this? And if they say okay, then at least they know going in, this is the culture that was created, this is what's expected in the building, and this is one of the things that this district or this building does to promote teacher leadership. So I think that's a big idea, and I think that's a big takeaway message as well. So our authors really stress 3 ways to create this, this balance of trust. It's this idea of shared leadership. If you have training, resources, and time to actually work together, and that there's appropriate communication. I really want to talk about the resources one, because if you really want teachers to do walkthroughs, they need to know why they're doing walkthroughs in the first place, because if they don't know what the point of the walkthrough is, why they're doing it, why they have to see a certain group of teachers, that's going to create more issues and more challenges than anything else. And they're just going to go in, fly by the seat of their pants, and it's not going to do the intentions of this, which, as we said in the first chapter, is to improve instruction. So here's my interpretation. How do you make this work? I'm a functionalist. I want things to work. So here's what I would do. I would have walkthroughs happen before the principal observes. If there are 2 teacher walkthroughs before the formal principal observation, the teacher should be more comfortable when the principal does come into their classroom. And if you can make this happen, all this is going to do, it's going to improve the situation, it's going to improve the educational process, and everybody's going to win from that. If the teacher can approach the principal if they have any questions, that's going to be another excellent technique as well in order to understand what the process is for the formal observation. And if they can relate it to what happened during the walkthrough, that's even better. So you must be student-centered, and students must come first. Observations for student improvement are really, it's easier said than done, because most people look at observations as a way to assess the teacher and evaluate the teacher. But if you can focus your culture on school improvement and show that the observations and the work that you're doing really is student-centered and that's what it's supposed to be, then that's going to improve the culture, because the teachers won't feel that much pressure, and their priority is going to be to create an environment that helps the students be successful, which is a big idea. So all participants have to work collegially, they have to talk, they have to craft, they have to engage others in their practice, and they have to root for each other to be successful and not feel like this is a massive competition. Observations are framed as a competition for a lot of districts, especially ones that have thresholds where 16% of the people are unsatisfactory, 68% are average, 16 are superior, and all of you know from what the system is in Tulsa right now, when you put it on a 16, 68, 16 bell curve, all that's going to do is create problems and challenges more than anything else. And you have to find a way to create collegiality and work together. So you need people to be able to work towards improving student learning. You want the instructional practices that have been hidden from others to not be hidden from others, and you want them to be open to the public, and you want everybody to know when something good is happening in a school, and you also want to have good reflective inquiry that really helps and promotes what student learning looks like and how to improve teaching practices in an organization. So collaborative inquiry, huge component of our doctoral program. We only touch upon this in the master's program, but it's this idea that teachers are really working together and they're analyzing data together. They're changing how instruction works. All the third graders are on the same position. They know what their third grade team is doing, and all the teachers are doing similar activities, and they're finding ways to assess student learning, and that they're working together. And we'll talk about methods like that in the doc program, but for here, understand that this is really truly what makes a professional learning community special, in ways that we can engage the professional learning community. So some benefits to this. This was kind of the findings from the research portion of this chapter, that it was this notion that when student learning affected instructional decisions, that was going to be a massive improvement. If there was instruction and curriculum adjustments, that could help as well. If there was cultivation within the school where everybody felt responsible for all students improving, that's great. You already know what I've said about on-the-job professional development. If it's done well, you've got to strive for this in your school system. If you've kind of developed school-wide professional development needs, that's important as well. And ultimately, it all links to student achievement as well. So you have to keep that in mind. So the other findings were sort of, what does continuous improvement look like? And once again, we've seen this and we've talked about a lot of this throughout this entire class. The first part is this notion of what does the desired future look like? What are students capable of achieving? What does that desired future seem to be, and what does it look like? Gathering data, having evidence from state assessments, benchmarks, classroom work, and being able to use that. Structuring ideas about different ways of working that really can help and potentially help students learn, but the fact that you hypothesize really means that you're thinking together, you're discussing these ideas together, and you're finding ways for them to work together. And the authors really stress, that during the early stages of the walkthrough process, you really need to find teachers who can influence other staff members about processes and the value of doing this. If you can have teachers participate early on in the walkthrough process, it'll give you time to build the culture. This is something that isn't going to happen overnight. This is going to happen really over a few-year period, and you have to go into this knowing that. You want to make teachers feel safe. You want them to feel like that their comments aren't going to be used against them, and that they can give constructive feedback without being really bad to somebody. And you have to reinforce, this notion that professional growth opportunities are there to really help teachers become better, and that's the purpose of all of this. If teachers are better, students improve, instruction improves, and everybody wins. So that's the first 2 chapters in this book, and like I said, this is a new book. It's one that I picked that I really thought needed to be incorporated into this course. Chapter 3 gives some examples of successful walkthroughs, and this is very research-based. But I really think you need to read it before class happens or before you watch the video. So I would suggest that for this chapter, and as always, if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. Thank you.